We've got a lot to get through today, so I don't want to dwell on that too much, but there's just two things that I'd like to mention. First, and most importantly, happy birthday, Lucas. It is your birthday. I believe it's your 30th birthday. You don't look a day over 30. Congratulations. I hope you do something exciting today. And the second one is to let everyone know, I think this is our third last question time. What have we got? The 1st, the 7th, the 14th, the 21st. No, I think we've got 3 more to go. But anyway, we don't have much to go until the end of the year. So hopefully we can get as many people back and enjoying these sessions before we get to the end of the year. So let's get stuck into it. If you're just joining us from Facebook, welcome. We're going to go hard and fast. So do focus, put your phone on silent, switch your emails off, whatever it is. Give us your undivided attention for the next 30 to 40 minutes to really get the most out of today's session. So just to warm you up, as always, I want to ask you the question, what is more important, information or knowledge? So particularly for those of you that are joining us for the first time, I want you to think about this. If you're with someone, turn to them and tell each other the answer and why you think that's the case. If you're a long-time listener and you've forgotten, have a guess again. So is it information or knowledge? I'll give you a couple of more seconds to pick it, put your finger on it. And the answer is knowledge. So why do I say that? Well, the reason I ask you this question, this is what today's session is all about. Information is easy to come by. You know, it's organized data about something, and we are in what we call the information age. So between social media, the internet, Google, TV, newspapers, whatever it is, there is a ton of information around. So it's not hard in today's world to get a hold of information. But what is really hard is being able to interpret, understand, analyze, and apply it to your own circumstances. And that is what we call knowledge. So you only get knowledge through experience and education. And you know, there's an old saying that there's no substitute for experience. And with so much information out there, you really need to be able to know how to turn that information into knowledge so you can apply it to your own circumstances and you can work out between what is useful and reliable information versus what is not relevant or what is total rubbish and you shouldn't be worrying about it. So it's a really, really important skill. Now, how do you do that? Well, today we're going to go through a bit of a framework that we use, but also ultimately today is a shortcut. So the reason you've joined us today is we will shortcut you. Ask us any questions you want about anything to do with owning a home, and we will try and answer it and give you that immediate knowledge. And obviously, you can help leverage that idea and that concept and that framework and use it yourself in everyday life. So really, really important concept. So just keep that in mind as we're going through today's session. Now, you know, for a lot of you might say, yeah, well, that's easy. That's what you guys do day in, day out. But it wasn't always like this. You know, I've understand, you know, being homeless. I understand the concept of getting kicked out of a share house, you know, paying the rent only to find that your fellow tenants didn't pay the rent, getting thrown out. You know, I've told this story before a number of years ago, you know, 20 plus years ago, after a big night out, you can imagine I'm half asleep. I'm feeling absolutely terrible, only to get a knock on the door back in the day when the landlord would just turn up and ask for the rent. And to my surprise, as I stumbled out, you know, half asleep, pounding headache, to be given an eviction notice. And what I found out was that one of my housemates that was responsible for paying the rent, we'd all been giving him the money, hadn't actually gone and paid it for the last 3 or 4 months. He'd spent the money, we didn't have it. In that day and age, none of us really had the spare cash to make it up. And we were kicked out. Got a black mark against our names, and it was a terrible, terrible experience. And I'm sure many of you have experienced that in the past, or you might be experiencing that now. And so, you know, fast forward 20 years, and I've created what, you know, I had that sort of vision to do, which is to have my own home, create that security, and enjoy a passive income from investing in real estate. So, you know, most of us know that you're not going to be able to do that just by a job alone. And so you really need to invest in yourself and in your future, and doing that through real estate is a great option, which I've now done, and I own more than 11 investment properties. So that's a little bit about me and why perhaps you should listen to me. You know, what I bring to the table is not only the experience of how to transition from, you know, living pay to pay, day to day, wondering how you're going to get through, to now having that passive income, you know, no mortgage on my family home. But I also bring the training. You know, I'm a licensed real estate agent. I'm a chartered accountant by profession as well. So I've got that grounded in sort of reality and really understand the numbers as well, to help give a balance to both the emotional side of owning your own home and the financial side and the numbers side. So what are we going to go through today? Well, it's going to be short and sharp. As I said at the start of this, we'll go for about 30 to 40 minutes, really depending on how many questions we get from you guys. First of all, I'm going to go through what I call the information portion. And the idea is this: I'm just going to give you some thought starters. So I'm going to suggest a couple of key themes that I've seen over the last week happening as ideas for you to sort of think about what does that mean for you. That'll run for about 5 or so minutes. Then we'll jump into the second section, the knowledge portion of today's session. That'll go for 20 to 25 minutes. As I said, it will expand and contract depending on how many questions you ask. And that's really where I want you all to focus, jump in to get the most out of today and really walk away with some value and, you know, have spent this time well. That's where you need to focus, phone off, you know, concentrate and be there, you know, put yourself into this, because that is how we will give you the best and that's how you'll get the most out of this. And then lastly, I'm going to just run through some next steps. So, you know, a lot of people say to me, this is great, but, you know, where do I go next? How do I find out more? Or, you know, what path should I be going on? Because it's different for everyone, depending on where you are in that home buying journey. So, you know, if for a moment you're thinking, well, hang on, I already own, you know, 3 or 4 properties and I'm an expert investor, there isn't something here for me. There is. Just as there is for first home buyers, people that are perhaps renting at the moment. Today's session is a framework. It's driven in terms of, you know, the content, the knowledge portion by what questions you ask. So whoever's on the line today, you'll really drive that. But we're going to talk through, you know, key themes and, you know, the framework that will work no matter where you are, whether you're just starting your home ownership journey or, you know, you've already got a number of investment properties. There'll be something here for everyone. So don't despair, don't tune out. And as I said, focus and you'll get some value out of today. Okay, so that's it for the introduction. I'm going to hit this. As I said, this is going to be the information portion of today. These are some thought starters to get you mind going and what questions you might ask. You can start throwing your questions in now to get to the top of the queue. But this is going to be quick and fast. So just pay attention and we'll get through this as quick as we can. All right. So what have I seen happening? The first one is interesting research from realestate.com about historical price growth. We'll break that down for you and what it means. You know, interest rates, they will go up at some point. What can you do? And auction listings or just listings in general have really started to ramp up. I'm going to tell you about the auction results in a moment. You know, some tips for those of you, as I said, that are at the start of your journey thinking it's impossible to get into the market. Let's run through some tips there and some examples. And then lastly, rental affordability. Those of you that have got a CBD apartment might think, what are you talking about? It's never been cheaper rents. But that's not there to last forever. And we'll break down those sort of statistics and what we've seen there. All right, so auction results. What did we see last weekend? It was a bumper weekend. So for those of you that might follow this, this is the first time in history that we have actually had more than 4,000 auctions in one weekend nationally. So we saw the total was 4,261 auctions for last weekend. Huge number. Sydney over 1,500 and Melbourne just under 2,000 auctions. So that is a huge number. But what do we see in terms of the results? Despite the doubling almost of auctions, we still got a clearance rate of over 70%. And the key markets, Sydney got 71% and Melbourne just under 69%. So still a really good, strong result. Just to give you an idea and to put this in a bit of context, not just in percentages, in terms of the number of transactions that happened in Sydney that were sold, 915 homes in one weekend. Melbourne, 1,105 homes in one weekend. So a really strong number, huge amount of homes going through. for a total of just under 2,500 homes for the weekend. So that gives you an idea in terms of how strong it is. So sure, look, at 71%, it was a little bit lower nationally, the clearance rate, than we have been getting. But just the number of homes that cleared, that is more than we've had in terms of the total number of homes going to auction in most of this year. So really, really strong result. And just showing, despite all these extra listings, we're still seeing transactions go through. So I think that's important for those of you that are a little bit worried or wondering what's going to happen, that we're still seeing the number of sales coming through. All right, just to give a little bit more context here as well, these are the realestate.com number of sales transactions we see each week. So why this is good, as I just talked about before with the number of homes that were sold, this gives you an idea as to how many homes were sold, whether via auction, private sale, off the plan, whatever it is, whatever data they've got. Now, don't worry too much about how specific is the number, but this is really just showing you a trend that the red line is 2021, so this year, the blue line was last year, and the grey line was 2019. So you can see back in 2019, when there was no such thing as a pandemic, you can see how much higher the red line has been tracking, and we've been seeing a ton of sales going through. So that's really important, that with not only seeing record prices, there is still a huge depth to the market, which really just shows the strength and the large quantity of transactions that are underpinning these numbers in terms of price growth and clearance rates that we've been seeing. Unsurprising, when you break it down state by state, wherever we're seeing the biggest change year on year, obviously Victoria, 62% up in the terms of the number of sales in 2021 versus 2020. No surprise there. And pretty much right across the country, very, very strong growth in the number of transactions happening. All right, that was it. As I said, it's quick, it's fast, and that was really just meant to give you a bit of a thought starter, give you a quick overview as to what happened. So for those of you that haven't been here before, who am I? My name is James Maitland, and I'm the General Manager here at Salvo. I've been doing this for more than 20 years, and I've helped create more than 11,500 homes for people just like you on the line today. Whether that be your first home, your next home, or an investment property, at Salvo Property Group, that's what we're all about. We've got a ton of different businesses and a lot of different ways that we can help you. But ultimately, everything is about helping you create a home. So, it could be as simple as just helping you refinance an existing home loan, finding a tenant for an investment property, buying your next home, whatever it is, as I said, on that journey, we can help you, and that's part of what we do, and that's what we love doing. On the panel today, we've got Greg Arbeck, Jack Gian, and of course, birthday boy Lucas Karras. These guys have got a wealth of experience, and most of you have probably also met them over your journey. So lucky to have these guys running through with us today. If you haven't done one of these on Zoom before, how do you get involved? Really, really easy. There's two ways. Q&A, everyone loves to do, and I've seen a lot of questions coming through already. Alternatively, you can raise your hand and come live onto our virtual stage. As I said before, I'm not going to labour on the point. To get the most out of this, turn your phone off, mute your emails, whatever it is, remove the distractions. The next 20 to 25 minutes, if you focus, get involved and be part of it, I guarantee you'll walk out having gained a ton of value from today's session. All right, there's a lot of questions coming in, but Greg did ask me to let him go first off to give myself a chance to do this. Greg, you said you got a bonus Christmas tip for everyone out there. We've been talking about interest rates a lot and home loans. Give it to the people while I start reading up on some of these questions that have been coming through.
Absolutely, James. As we've always been pushing, and we said lock in, and hopefully a lot of our people have done that. But the Christmas tip or bonus is, if you can and you've got the ability, pay a bit more on your mortgage every month. It's very, very important that you do this. Whether it's from $150 to $1,000 over the period of the loan, it makes a huge difference.
So, Greg, we were talking about this before, and I guess what you were sort of saying to me is that if people have been listening, they've probably locked in a fixed rate for 2 or 3 years or 1 year even at around 2%.
Yep.
And we're expecting, as interest rates sort of normalise in the next couple of years, that variable rates will be what, around that 3.25%, 3.5%?
As you can say, circa 3.5%. So that's if you were actually, say you've secured a 2-year fixed term.
Yep.
If you now start paying whether it's 150 up to $1,000 extra amount, which you probably could because interest rates are so low. After those 2 years, even though you might be saving, 17 to $100 a month over the life term, that's per month. Over the term of the loan, it makes a huge difference. And by the time you actually reach that, where the interest rates are going up, you're probably then a bit of ahead of the game. So you're not then putting yourself under pressure to try and find additional funds to keep that mortgage payment going. So where we've said to them, try and lock something in, which hopefully a lot of you have done. If you can, start paying a bit more every month on your mortgage so that by the time interest rates do go up, and they will, that you're actually ahead of the game, or at least you're not under pressure to find that extra money to pay your mortgage.
All right, good. I love that bonus tip there for Christmas. So if any of you didn't quite get what Greg's saying, he's effectively said you're going to be paying probably 3.5% in the next couple of years as you come off that fixed rate. So why not start paying it today if you can? And that's going to do two things. One, it's going to build you a buffer so you can draw down on that money if you need to later. But if you don't, that's going to put you ahead in your repayments, which means when they come off, your repayments will be lower than if you didn't make these. And that's going to save you a ton of money over the life of your mortgage. A 25 to 30-year mortgage, that is going to make a huge difference over that period. So really, really good Christmas tip. Of course, you've got to start today, not in a couple of weeks' time, because then you would have spent all of your pay on Christmas presents. So probably start, make that change right this second, Greg.
Yeah, absolutely.
Finish today's question time. Wait maybe another half an hour before you jump on and do it.
Or my kids can first be buying my present and then go and do it.
All right, I like that. Good idea. All right, I've seen a question here from Benny, jumping straight into what I was talking about with the auction results. Quite a long question here, but I think generally the gist of Benny's question, and I'm sure a lot of you are probably wondering this, is why are we seeing so many more listings coming on right now? Can someone sort of explain the reason why we've suddenly had more than 4,000 auctions and why we're seeing, these really, really surging number of listings for sale?
Yes, James. Before I explain the reason, I was thinking there's a more exciting news I want to share, because I think you shared with us and more than 4,000 auction last week, and we're going to say more than 5,000 auction is to be hit on the market this week. And only in Melbourne, we will say more than 2,000 auction to be held this weekend. And the Sydney is also 1,200 at the auction. So it's a huge number. So we're just saying the number is just an increase and an increase. There's more listing. I think the reason is minorly two. The first one is for those vendors who will not be able to sell in during the lockdown. Now they bring the property back to the market. Obviously, the second is there is an increased number of the vendors they are considering to selling, because they're thinking now the market is still very hot. So that's why we were saying that increased number of the listing come up to the market.
Okay. And so, Benny, hopefully that answered your question. I've seen a few people jumping on as well with the obvious next question, Jack. So what do we actually expect is going to happen? I mean, we always talk about real estate being a supply and demand game. If supply is going up in terms of the number of listings, what do you think is going to happen down the track?
I think the people who are asking those questions, maybe they're thinking the price is going to fall or whatever. But I would say, maybe we will say the effect from those huge number of the listing will affect a little bit of the clearance rate. We might say the clearance rate is falling a little bit, as we saying the previous week and a few weeks ago. But definitely, I think as we have the huge number of listings, but there are still huge demand from the buyers looking to buy. So we will still saying like the market is very active and is very, very hot.
All right, good. I've got a really interesting question here from Margaret, and we get this often saying, well, I think they're listening to you, Jack, and saying it doesn't matter. I'm a first home buyer. I still can't afford to buy here. I'm not seeing anything happen. There's not enough homes around. And that is a hard thing because we do talk generally at a macro level. So Margaret, I don't know where you're trying to find a home because that can obviously have, every market's got its own differences. But we get these questions all the time. And Lucas, we were talking about it before, and there was a great sort of story on the weekend that really summed it up as to some key tips for those first home buyers and younger listeners on the call today as to what they can do to try and get themselves in the market. Do you want to hit us with it? What can people do, and how can they get into the first home quicker?
Look, exactly, James. And look, and I've got children. You've got children. All of us pretty much have got children, and it's very important to start educating them, start getting them into saving from as young age as possible, because that gives them the right start, to be able to get into the market, because we see the prices increase week after week, day after day in some cases. So finding the deposit you require, finding the property you like, and be able to afford it, it's a very big task. So it's important at least get the most important part ready, is to have your savings, to have your deposit. So
should that start with your kid's Dolomite account, like we used to get in junior school, the little deposit book from CBA and our Dolomites?
You're 100% right, my friend. You're 100% right. I've got that. I've got 3 daughters. They all have a Dolomite account. So whatever they can put, it goes a long way. So let's get on with the tips. Look, start saving from the day you finish school. That's a tip number 1. It's very hard for young adults to save, after you get your first job, then you move out of home. There's a lot of distractions and this newfound freedom. So it makes it harder for them to focus and to save. So it's very important for us as parents to start telling the children to save from as young age as possible. They actually stay based on studies. The perfect age is to start from 9 years old. That's what they're suggesting. So, always put, if you're somebody that's just got a job, always put some savings away from your very first job, even if it's as little as 10% of your earnings. Set a budget. When you're a little bit older, when you spend money on shopping, look for deals like vouchers, discount codes, cashback offers, and avoid credit cards. That's the biggest trap for all of us, not just for youngsters, but also for us as well. Number 2, use a parental guarantor. So, obviously most parents want to see their children and help their children to afford, to buy into a property. So most of the parents are fortunate enough to have a house that has, over the years, developed substantial equity that you can use part of that equity to help your children without having to use cash. So, this is not as risky as many people might think. Obviously, the number 1 factor is you've got to make sure that your children can afford to make the repayments. As long as they can afford to make the repayments, there's really zero risk. Also, before you start this arrangement with them, have a very good chat and have an entry and exit arrangement. For an example, how long this loan is going to be for. So if you're going to be a guarantor, you can put in the contract of sale that I guarantor the 10% deposit, and that will be the first thing that will be paid off before anything else. So doesn't have to be a commitment for the 30-year, for the life of the loan, so to speak. Number 3, live at home for longer, because that helps you save. So for an example, if you stay longer at the family home, you can save as much as $30,000 or $40,000 on average per year. This is 3-4 years of deposit fast-tracked. It's like your health. Most young people like to go to the gym once a week, and you stick to the same plan. So it's the same thing with saving. Stick to a plan, make a plan, and stick to it. Weekly, monthly plan. While you stay at home with your parents, the money you save, put some money aside every week and stick to it. Number 4 tip, one of my favorite, rent vest. So most people want to buy a property in the suburb they grew up or in their ideal location that they want to live in, but financially, it's out of the risk. So the best advice for all those people, rent in the suburb that you want to live, but buy a property in a suburb that you can afford. Rent that property out and create income. Number 5, invest with a friend or a family member. So we see many siblings combining their savings for a deposit and buying a property together. You know, one of my favorite sayings is 50% of something is better than 100% of nothing. Now, of course, as all joint ventures go, there can be complications down the track. So just make sure you discuss and have an exit plan before you enter into this. Now, my final tip, drop the ego about where you want to buy. So a lot of people worry about what others might think when it comes time to making, a purchase. Stop worrying about that and think about what makes a financial sense. Your first property doesn't have to be your dream home or your forever home, but use it as a stepping stone. What you need to help you achieve your end goal and get where you desire to be. Use the long-term approach. That's my 6 tips.
All right, I love it. Greg, wake up, because I want to hit you next. And I think for a lot of people as well, it's that last tip that Lucas said, you can take that anyway. And I was quite lucky to get an advanced copy of every month the CoreLogic monthly stats that they put together for house price growth. So I got that last night and I was studying it. And look, there's a ton of great information, and we'll talk more about that next week. But one of the biggest themes that came out of that is the gap in terms of value between freestanding homes and apartments has never been bigger. And it's basically got to the point where it's gotten ridiculously wide, that it's really either saying that freestanding homes are way, way overvalued, which I don't subscribe to, because I think that there's still good value even at these prices. But it's showing that apartments are undervalued and underloved. So as Lucas said, when we talk about dropping your ego, where some people say, I will only buy a freestanding home on a quarter-acre block with a white fence, blah, 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 blah. Well, maybe that's the case, but that's not going to be your first home. And an apartment is a great stepping stone. I think particularly at this point in time, with that massive gap between freestanding homes and apartments, there could never be more value in apartments. So Greg, we were talking about this earlier in the week. There was a recent report put out, I think, by Jones Lang LaSalle, just giving a bit of an overview. Can you perhaps run everyone through, demand, supply,
sure,
and so forth for apartments, to give them a bit more insight into the numbers behind why we say it's such a good option?
Yeah, and it's actually it's a huge report. So I've just been pouring through it, trying to find out some key points. But exactly what you say, the differentiation between houses and apartments has never been greater. However, a lot of the housing has been driven by a number of factors, which low interest rates, incentives, etc. And as this has pushed pricing high, more people are now looking at the apartment side of things. So you look at and then with that demand, you're seeing that there's growth there. So people are now going, well, let's start looking at apartments. Investors will start looking at apartments. So we actually can foresee, and when the borders reopen, so we've had an artificial lack of interest in apartments because there's been no migration, no population growth. Everything has been stable. So the demand for property is definitely going to, or when you say property, apartments is increasing. So that's an important thing. So with increasing demand combined with, and then you look at the actual figures. So this is not Greg Arbeck's figures, the supply of apartments. So initially people think there's this massive oversupply. That's not the case. During the pandemic and stuff, a lot of projects were put on hold or moved forward. So we did see a fair bit amount of stuff that was under construction now being completed. But in the next 2022, right through 2024, that volume is going to be substantially reduced. So you can't just drop them out. So now you've got this increasing demand coming in, and the supply of apartments not being built. And so we get that good balance where we've got increasing supply, a lack of supply, increasing demand will start pushing, put pressure on prices upwards on apartments.
And I know we've got a lot of investors on the line as well.
Yep.
Any thoughts in terms of rentals, which I know has been
Well, I was looking at that. There's a whole section on this as well, and that's also very crucial. Again, we've been artificially punished by the pandemic in terms of demand for rentals. But as we've already seen that is stabilizing very, very nicely. And as we get the borders open, as we get migration from different states, as we get that will put upward pressure on rentals. And again, we can see that there was quite a key thing they put in here. So yes, we did get our vacancy rates in residential properties, especially in the city, did go crazy in the first year of the pandemic. But when you put it into context, quite a big proportion of that was short stay. So when the whole hospitality industry and the hotel industry, these guys just went, okay, we can't do this anymore, and they threw that into the pool of long-term rentals. I think that artificially put a number on long-term rentals that would not normally added pressure to it, but that has been taken up. That uptake's been there. We're seeing stability, and the factors that I've indicated now, with more people coming in, the rental market will start stabilizing, and we'll see some good growth in the next few years.
All right, good. So can you perhaps sum it up, one or two sentences? What should people expect over the next couple of years?
Well, I think 2022 is going to be a great year for that. We will start seeing growth. Number one, less things being built. So supply reducing, more people coming back in. So we've got migration plus instatatal plus, all that starts normalizing. So increased demand and supply reducing. So in the medium term, we're going to see some really good growth, I think, in rentals and in potential reducing the gap between apartments and freestanding homes.
All right, great. I've seen too many questions for me to keep on top of as Greg was talking coming through. So Greg, obviously a very popular topic. Perhaps for everyone, just to make it a little bit easier, because I don't think we can get time, if we've since answered your question, just drop in there answered. If not, just say, unanswered or waiting, perhaps put in waiting, and I'll try and filter those. And if I can, throw them at Greg. If not, we'll come back directly to you, because I know there's a lot to cover there, and Greg really only just scratched the surface. We might even delve into this again next week if there's enough unanswered questions. So if you can just help us there, if we have since answered you, it'll just help me clear the decks here and try and focus on those points that we haven't done. While you're doing that, I think a couple of the comments that were coming through, or questions, were obviously, again, pointing towards the market. What do we expect? What do we think is going to happen with prices? And I know I mentioned at the top of today's show that there was a really good research piece done by realestate.com over last week, where they sort of went back over time and had a look, how does this compare to previous market increases? And you'd be surprised to know that this is the third fastest increase in house prices on record ever. So can someone break down, whoever studied that the best, jump in, when were the other two previous booms that were stronger than what we've seen, and sort of give us a quick one or two sentences about why they were so strong.
Okay, James, before I go into that, I think most of the listener, like me, very surprised, because with the pandemic, it's COVID, and pretty much hated it globally, we've seen the Australian property market increased at the third fastest rate in the history. So for me, before I knew that, I was very surprised. And anyway, so I had to look the research down. The highest the increase, which is about 60 years ago, was happened in 1950. The reason is been because by the 1950, the government removed the control on the housing price. So that makes the prices, increase dramatically. The second highest increase was happened on 1989, when the time is some new change on the financial and the deregulation of the financial industry happened in Australia.
Okay, so the obvious question, and I guess why we love going back in time over history, is to see what happened after and perhaps see if that's a prediction for what we can expect. So I imagine prices went down relatively significantly after those last two booms. Is that what we're expecting to see again, or how can we correlate that history to what we're thinking is going to happen now?
Yes, you're right, James. For the those two and increase after that is following by the price falls. But this time, will we have the same trend or not? I would say, I'm pretty sure the price is not gonna falling. And I think the reason is very, very simple. I'm thinking probably 3 reasons. First of all, like I mentioned before, there's very, very strong demand from the buying the property now. Even we're saying like the increased number of the listing or more home coming onto the market to feed the buyers, we will still seeing the more activity, more transaction, more people looking to buy, inquiry the property. So we're saying the property market will be hot and the demand will be keep going in the next few years. Second of all, compare with the few years ago, like the 2017, 2018. Now we're saying like the borrow conditions is quite good. It's favorable for the buyer. So now it's timing to borrow your money and doing the finance. The third thing is with the RBA, they again to confirm the interest rate will not increase in another 2 years, which also give the confidence of the buyer and also keep the price up. So overall looking, I was saying the price growth in the next few years in the coming period are very solid. They will not falling through.
All right, good. I saw the questions lighting up as you're going through that as well, Jack. So I'm just conscious of time. So for those of you that still got questions, we might hang around at the end and answer some more of those questions. So that I just want to, as I said, give some closing thoughts and as to where I see you can move forward on your journey, and then we'll jump back into those questions. So do hang around if we haven't answered your question yet, and we'll all stay around as long as is needed to get those questions done. Okay, so I told you 1st of December, there's only 30 days left in 2021. Then we're going to be jumping into 2022, 2023. A lot of what we talked about today has been showing some of the short-term trends as well as forecasting over the next couple of years. So it's really important that you set the foundations today to make sure that you've got yourself on track for the next couple of years, because it's very, very easy to sort of just tread ground and only to find that years and years have passed by and you haven't made those changes. So that's why I think it's really, really important that, if you've enjoyed today, you've got to think about what's next. How do I leverage what we've been discussing today? How do I, leverage that concept of actionable knowledge? And how do I go out and put that into place? So, the first thing that I say is most of you are going to do this. That is, you're going to do nothing. Now, what I mean by do nothing is you're going to continue to do what you've always been doing. Now, for those of you that are kicking goals, then that's great. Don't change anything. But for those of you that, perhaps have been looking to buy your first home for a while, or struggling to get your first investment property, or moving out of home for the first time and it's been challenging, just remember, if you don't make any changes, don't expect to get a different result. So what I really, really implore that all of you do is think about what we've discussed today, think about the frameworks, and at a bare minimum, go out there, leverage the framework we've discussed and do it yourself. Make those changes, move forward and smash those goals over the next couple of years that you're looking to do. But there is an alternative, and this is what I really, really would love for everyone to do, and that's to do it with us. So how can we help you? Well, there's a ton of different ways we can help you. As I said, a lot of different things we do, and we've got to understand more about you, so that we can help you. So before I get into how we might do that, I just want to clarify, it's not going to be for everyone. Not everyone is going to be necessarily the right fit. You've got to be prepared to actually do the work, understand the concept of actionable knowledge, make the changes, take on board the feedback, understand the framework and get out there and make it happen. So if that sounds like you, then definitely you will be the right fit. And I'm sure that we can help you and that we can get you to your goals faster. So how can I help you? Well, as I said, I know very, very little about you right now through this medium. It's great. Those of you that have been asking you questions, thank you for getting involved. So what I think the next best step that we can do is to get to know a little bit more about you. So what I've done in order to do that is I've set aside time in everyone's diary over the next 5 days, specifically for these sessions, just to get to know more about you. where, you know, we're talking about 15 to 20 minutes of your time. So it's a very, very small investment I'm asking from you. And really what we'll do is just have a general chat, ask some more questions that you might not have had answered today. We can get a feel as to where you are on that journey. So as I said, it doesn't matter where you are, whether you're just starting the very start to buy your first home or moving out of home for the first time, or you're an experienced investor. Wherever you are along that journey, we can help you. And that's why we want to understand a little bit more about you. And then we can really help to prescribe how the next best steps are for you and where we can help you if we can help you there. We can't help everyone, but I'm pretty sure that we can help at least 95% of you out there. But you've got to be prepared to put in that time and actually invest 15 minutes. Now, remember, it's not a long time, not asking for a lot, but you've got to be prepared to come and invest that time. And I guarantee you, if you do, that you'll walk away with value. Even if you decide not to work with us in the future, you'll still walk away with things that you can immediately implement and get those small wins straight away. So if that sounds like something you want to do, it's really, really easy to do. There's 3 ways you can do it. First one is jump. If you're on Zoom, there should be a link in the chat. When you join this session, your web browser should have been redirected to the booking page. And lastly, for those of you that are not sure yet, maybe you don't have your diaries, you don't want to jump in just yet, I will send you a follow-up email after the session ends, and that'll have the link that you can book in. If you're watching from Facebook, somewhere on our homepage, you should have the booking link. You can jump on there and book one of those sessions as well. So really, really simple. As I said, it is the smallest possible investment I can ask you to make, 15 to 20 minutes of your time, and still guarantee that you'll get value and you'll walk away with something that you can immediately implement, whether we work together in the future or not. So don't delay and book one of those sessions. Now, I want to just refresh those of you that have heard this before, great. But those of you that join us for the first time, as I said, you've got to be prepared to take action and make those steps. So middle of the year, I was lucky enough to get away in between all of the lockdowns we had to Hamilton Island. Fantastic part of the world. It was a really, really great holiday. I think we were there for 4 or 5 days. And I think it was on day 2 when my eldest daughter said to me, Dad, I'd love to walk up to the top of that mountain and watch the sunrise. That sounded great. I said, Isabella, let's do it. And when I went to set my alarm that night to wake up, and I checked when the sun rises, it was at 4:45. So for those of you that know, one of the joys of being on holiday is to be able to sleep in and not have any plans. But she was excited, so I set my alarm and went to sleep. Now, as is always the case, it felt like it had only been about 10 or 15 minutes when I heard that annoying beep, 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 beep of the iPhone alarm going off. So what did I do? What all of you will do all the time, and hit that snooze button. 8 or so minutes later, it went off again. This time I said, I've had enough, and I hit the stop button. I rolled over, fell back asleep, only to find about a minute or 2 later, I woke up and I thought, what am I doing? She was excited. We were going to have fun. So I forced myself to get out of bed. I woke her up. We ran to the top of the mountain and we got this fantastic photo. You know, if you can see the joy on her face, she had an amazing time. And it's one of those really, really great memories that we both did together, and we'll always remember this. So this is something that I'm so, so glad that I was able to push through, you know, do the hard work, get up, get to the top of that mountain and share this experience, because it's something that that's going to stick with me. And I know that she really had a great time. Now, the reason for telling you this is that it didn't take a lot for me to get out of bed. You know, it wasn't a big thing to get up earlier. Did it make a big change to my life that, oh, I didn't sleep in for another hour? No. But the experience that I got, the joy that I've got, you know, the experience that I was able to give my daughter in this memory is irreplaceable. So the reason why I say this to you is just think about it before you decide to tune out and leave us today without booking one of those sessions. We're only asking you for a very, very small commitment. And you've got to remember, it's the people that actually will take those actions, that don't hit the snooze button, that do get up and get out of bed and do those things that sometimes appear hard, but are actually really, really easy, that are going to get the results, that are going to get these fantastic memories, that are going to be able to create a home and create many, many more memories with their family and friends. So, you know, if you haven't done it yet, jump on and book one of those sessions, because that is how you'll really be able to move the needle. And going into 2022, that is how I know you'll get the results that you're looking for. So jump on and grab one of those sessions before the year is out. Okay, that is it. That is the end of today's session. As I said, I will try to get you out of here by 3:10. We've gone a few minutes over. Those of you that want to hang around and ask a few more questions, we'll hang around for as long as you have questions to ask. For everybody else, thank you very much for joining us today. It was a pleasure having you here. We had a great session. Everyone that got involved and asked all those questions, thank you. To the rest of the guys on the panel, thank you for your input. And I know that on behalf of me and everyone, we thank you very much for your time and commitment, because we know there's a lot of things you could be doing. And we look forward to closing out 2021 with you and hope that you can join us for another session before the year is out. So thank you very much to everyone that's leaving. Those of you that want to stick around, will stick around and ask your questions. So thank you, everyone, and thanks, guys, on the panel.